Servant hurried to meet her. Please give me a little water from your jar. Drink, my lord, she said, and quickly lowered the jar to her hands and gave him a drink. After she had given him a drink, she said, I'll draw water for your camels too. And then she drew all the water for the camels. And so you have you have someone giving. This is Mohammed Hijab's idea of Rebekah. You're missing this, AP.
Oh, yeah.
Here's Rebekah, according to Mohammed Hijab. Little 3-year-old, absolutely shredded. Absolutely shredded. And she would have to be, right? She's hauling water. She's hauling water for 10 camels. And so, guys.
The She-Hulk.
So someone brought up, this was just, I think this was Hijab posting that he had graduated from Al-Azhar. I don't know if that's authentic or if that's just one of his dad's trick degrees or something like that. Don't know. But then someone said something about Muhammad and Aisha, and then Mohammed Hijab, or someone else said something about Rebekah being 3 or whatever. Matter of fact, why don't I just scroll up and see what happens? Not a single verse mentioned there. Aisha, according to us, was 3 times older than Rebekah, according to Genesis. There you go. Look at that. So someone asked how old Aisha was. He said, Aisha, according to us, was 3 times older than Rebekah, according to Genesis. Got that? So he's saying that in Genesis, so Aisha was 9. Mohammed Hijab acknowledges that. And therefore, Rebekah would be 3, according to Mohammed Hijab. Matter of fact, according to Genesis, according to what he's saying. And then Luciano says, correctly, not a single verse in Genesis mentions her age. And then we have age, and then we have the math. Gotta love Dawah math here, ladies and gentlemen. Except, guys, they all cut and paste this same thing. This is not Hijab coming up with this. They all cut and paste the same little thing. You can find it all over the place. But you can always, once you know what they did, once you know where the lie occurs, then it's easy to expose. And it's just it's really amazing because, again, the math here does not work without the lie. And the lie is always about Genesis 22. They say it says something that it does not say. Right? So let's check this out. Mohammed Hijab says, Sarah gave birth to Isaac at 90. Genesis 17. And this is, you have to watch Dawah guys when they give sources, because they give sources just to pretend, right? They give sources hoping that you will never look up the sources. And matter of fact, knowing that their followers will never in 100 million years look up sources, right? It's the 99-1 rule. Sarah gave birth to Isaac at 90, Genesis 17. She died at 127, Genesis 23, 1-3, meaning Isaac was 37 when she passed. So they're trying to establish a timeline here. So Isaac was 37 when Sarah died. The Mount Moriah incident, Genesis 22, and the birth of Rebekah occurred simultaneously, aligning with Sarah's death. That's the lie. There's nothing at all in Genesis 22 that says the birth of Rebekah, the Mount Moriah incident, and Sarah's death all occurred simultaneously. We'll look at the passage. We'll look at the passage later. All it says is Abraham heard about all the people who've been born since he's left. One of those people was Rebekah. It lists a bunch of other people. In other words, Abraham had left home way earlier, and he finally got news from home, and he hears about all his relatives that have been born. And they say, oh, right there when he heard it, that's when all of these people must have been born right at that second. That is insane. That is absurd. It's not what the text says at all. And without that lie, you can't get Rebekah was 3. And therefore, Rebekah was born when Isaac was 37. Isaac married Rebekah at 40, Genesis 25:20, making her no older than 3, perhaps slightly older, like 3 years and 1 month, depending on how you interpret Nahor's family timeline, Genesis 22, 20-24. Genesis presents the details, the math reveals the implications. You guys get that? Genesis presents the details, the math reveals the implications. Only problem is Genesis does not say this. It's a lie, and his math is based upon a lie. but he knows his followers are too stupid. He knows that when we expose the lie, his followers will just believe him because they're programmed to. And I have to say, this is a sad reality. It's not just psychological. It's not just the psychological allegiance to your Dawah guy. The Dawah fans, especially the fans of Mohammed Hijab, they seem so stupid that they don't understand what you're saying. Like if you say, here's what Genesis 22 actually said, they will not understand anything you're saying. They're too dumb. Like 100 generations of first cousin marriage has destroyed their ability to actually understand anything you're saying. And so all they have is their allegiance to Dawah. Anyway, so that's what Hijab posted. You got a basic little thing from Brother Rashid here. Brother Rashid says, do you really believe that a 3-year-old girl could draw water from a well, pour it into a jar, and carry it on her shoulders? And by the way, it's not just like one jar of water. She watered 10 camels. She watered 10 camels. A 3-year-old. And a jar back then would have been like a big clay jar. You lower it down in this well, fill it with water, and then you haul this thing up. And she kept doing that for 10 camels. 3-year-old, very impressive 3-year-old. Are you so desperate to justify your prophet's actions that you would distort events and misrepresent the truth? Well, there's no question that he would distort events and misrepresent the truth. What's crazy, again, is that he'll do this about Abraham and Isaac. Abraham and Isaac. So the story, guys, is that Abraham sent his servant to get this bride for Isaac. Hijab argues that it was a 3-year-old. So what's that mean? That Abraham sends his servant out to get a 3-year-old to have sex with his son. So what's that mean? It means these guys they're all pedophiles, right? They're all pedophiles. They all think having sex with prepubescent little 3-year-olds is good. That's what Hijab is accusing them of. Anyway, let's go ahead and see what Brother Rashid says here. See, I'm just standing beside this spring and so on. Anyway, get down to the part about Rebekah. Before he had finished praying, Rebekah came out with her jar on her shoulder. She was the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, who was the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor. The woman was very beautiful. Woman? Wait a minute. I thought 3-year-old girl. The woman was very beautiful, a virgin. No man had ever slept with her. She went down to the spring, filled her.
It's 3-year-old woman. So.
Yeah, 3-year-old woman. Yes, we believe. We just have different views of what women are. The woman was very beautiful, a virgin. No man had ever slept with her. She went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came up again. So went to the spring, filled her jar, came up again. Servant hurried to meet her. Please give me a little water from your jar. Drink, my lord, she said, and quickly lowered the jar to her hands and gave him a drink. After she had given him a drink, she said, I'll draw water for your camels too. And then she drew all the water for the camels. And so you have someone giving, this is Mohammed Hijab's idea of Rebekah. You're missing this, AP.
Oh, yeah.
Here's Rebekah, according to Mohammed Hijab. Little 3-year-old, absolutely shredded. Absolutely shredded. And she would have to be, right? She's hauling water. She's hauling water for 10 camels. And so, guys,
the She-Hulk.
In reality, Genesis never gives an age for Rebekah. The only indication it gives is she's called a woman or a maiden or young woman. It said that she's a virgin and that she's in charge of the chores of getting water and stuff in the water jar, and she does things like water the camels and so on. That's it. That's what you have to go on as far as the Bible is concerned. So when we ask, is this correct? Is this correct that you could do the math here and get an age of 3 for Rebekah? The answer is no.
Yes.
Here we go. So here was my first response to this. I said, took me 2 seconds to spot the lie from Mohammed Hijab. Note, Dawah is always deception. Hijab says the Mount Moriah incident, Genesis 22, and the birth of Rebekah occurred simultaneously, aligning with Sarah's death. They occurred simultaneously, aligning with Sarah's death. Liar. I say, bull. It's a Dawah lie. Text doesn't say that at all. Muslim, and look at the challenge. I called on 2 billion Muslims. Prove me wrong here. Muslims, prove me wrong by quoting the verse that says the birth of Rebekah occurred at the same time as the Mount Moriah incident. When you can't, ask yourself, I'm telling them you should be a little bit self-reflective in all this. You're falsely accusing prophets that you claim to respect of being pedophiles, and you love it. So why don't you reflect back on this sort of thing? When you can't, ask yourself why your Dawah heroes gladly lie about God's prophets when they claim to respect them. And without Hijab's lie here, his math doesn't work. Keep in mind, this is a popular Muslim accusing Prophet Abraham of sending his servant to find a 3-year-old girl for his son Isaac to have sex with. They claim to respect prophets, but they lie about them and accuse them of pedophilia, all to distract people from Muhammad, who actually had sex with a prepubescent 9-year-old girl and who was therefore an actual pedophile. Shielding a pedophile by lying about prophets. Dawah is demonic. Don't tell us to respect your book, your fake prophet, or your religion when your book, your fake prophet, and your religion cause you to act like this. It's all pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Pretty straightforward, but we're just getting started because Hijab is going to have to lie in order to defend this. What did he say? It's all in Genesis. It's all right there in Genesis. So what did I say? I challenged him and all Muslims. Show us chapter and verse. Where does it say that? Hijab said it says it. Where does it say it? Is that too much to ask? You're saying, hey, it's in Genesis, and I say, show that to me in Genesis, and you can't? Is that too much to ask, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes.
You're making a claim. You say, here. I mean, if I just said, hey, the Quran says torture puppies for fun or something like that, and you say where, and then I change the subject, would that be fine?
Yes.
Would that be fine? Because that's what you guys do. So now let's go ahead and look at Hijab's response. You ready? You ready, guys?
Yes.
This is Hijab's response when I said, show me in Genesis where it says this. Here's his response.
Well, let me do a handstand.
Yeah. And he didn't even try. He didn't even try to show from Genesis. Instead, he went to 2 rabbis. He went to 2 rabbis. And this is about to get hilarious because it's IP, Inspiring Philosophy, who absolutely demolished Hijab on this one. I mean, absolutely demolished him on this one. So look at what Hijab says here. So what was the challenge? Hey, Hijab, you just said that this is in Genesis. Show us, chapter and verse. Where does it say that? And here's his response. Here are some scholarly sources you can read that indicate Rebekah was 3. Scholarly sources, ladies and gentlemen. He says, 2 rabbis. So here we go. Rashi's commentary on Genesis 25:20 says, 40 years old. For when Abraham came from Mount Moriah, he was informed that Rebekah had been born. Isaac was 37 years old, for at that time Sarah died, and from that time that Isaac was born until the binding of Isaac when Sarah died were 37 years, for she was 90 years old when Isaac was born, and 127 when she died, as it is stated above 23:1. The life of Sarah was 127 years. This makes Isaac 37 years old, and at that time Rebekah was born. There's the problem. At that time Rebekah was born. Where's that coming from? It's not in the Bible. It doesn't say it. So am I supposed to believe this when it's saying something that's false? Do you get that? This is making a false claim. The Bible does not say that. And Hijab is saying, I have to believe it anyway. Why? Why do I have to believe this? Why? It's saying something false.
Because I want you to believe it.
And guess what? Other rabbis called him out for this. Other rabbis called him out and said, that's not what it says. So anyway, this makes Isaac 37 years old, and at that time Rebekah was born. He waited for her until she would be fit for marital relations 3 years and then married her. From Genesis Rabbah 57:1. Keep in mind, guys, Genesis Rabbah is not the Bible. That's not the Bible. And here we have, Isaac was 37 years old at his binding. When Abraham returned from Mount Moriah, at that very moment Sarah died, and Isaac was then 37. And at that very time, Abraham was told of Rebekah's birth. Look at that. Look what just happened. At that very time, Abraham was told of Rebekah's birth. At that very time, Abraham was told of a ton of people's births. He was told about a bunch of people. Do you conclude, therefore, that's when all these people were born? No, That would be absolutely ridiculous. But since this guy says it, Hijab tells us we have to believe it. And he says, thus we find that Rebekah was 3 years old when she married Isaac. Interesting. You want to know interesting? Look at this. 2,200 likes. 2,200 likes on this. That's what happens if you lie. If you're a Dawah guy and you lie to your fans. That's what they do. Let's see. We have my response. I have it pulled up here where I've already clicked on it. So everyone got this so far?
Yes.
We're understanding so far. So what were the claims? The claims were Rebekah was 3 according to Genesis, and he pretended to do the math, but he lied about what it said. And then when I called him on it and said, hey, it doesn't say that, show me where it says that, he said, aha, look at these 2 rabbis. Rabbis who are contradicted by other rabbis. So he's going to be called for cherry picking, like you have to actually pick a rabbi to get you the number you want so that you can do your math and conclude that Rebekah was 3, so that you can defend your claim as a Muslim that Abraham and Isaac were actually pedophiles. We all good so far?
Yes.
All right. So here's my response to that. Mohammed Hijab is doubling down on his lies about Prophet Abraham and Prophet Isaac so he can accuse them of conspiring to rape a 3-year-old girl. Welcome to Islam. It's actually what he's arguing. And again, the weird part, his fans love it. He's accusing Abraham and Isaac of conspiring to rape a 3-year-old girl, and they love it. He gets thousands of likes from his fans on this. Tell me this isn't demonic, people. Look at what Hijab originally posted. Genesis presents the details. The math reveals the implications. So it's just Genesis and math, right? And he used Genesis as the source until I pointed out that Genesis said no such thing. When I proved that it's not Genesis and not math, he changed his argument and now tells us that we have to trust rabbis who also can't show us that the text says it. Is Hijab drunk? I could give him Muslim commentary. I forgot I pointed this out. Is Hijab drunk? I could give him Muslim commentaries on various issues in Islam, and he would reject those commentaries because he doesn't agree with their reasoning. In other words, I could show him a Muslim scholar. If Hijab looks at that and says, well, this guy's reasoning is bad, he'll say, I'm not going to agree with him. Why? You don't have to agree with a Muslim scholar if you think his reasoning is bad. And that's people from his own religion. Him saying, David, you have to go with what this rabbi said, that's really, really weird. But let's see. But he turns to us, and when he can't prove his point from the Bible, he tells us that we have to agree with rabbis from thousands of years after the events who can't give anything remotely resembling a sound argument. They're not. There's no argument saying that she was born at this same time. It's just they just say it. Why does he tell us we have to agree with these rabbis? Because he needs it so he can accuse Prophet Abraham and Prophet Isaac of conspiring to rape a 3-year-old. This is the true face of Islam. They pretend to love the prophets, but lie about them and falsely accuse them of being pedophiles. Dawah is demonic, and Mohammed Hijab is proving it. Proving it. We got all this so far, AP?
Yes. I'm on the one hand looking at the rabbinic commentary. It's quite funny.
Are you?
Yeah.
Got to find here. Wanted to find IP's response. All right, here we go. You ready for IP's response? Because IP burns his butt up, man, on cherry picking. So think about the cherry picking going on here. One, he says, this is what Genesis says. When he is exposed as a liar like his God and his prophet and other Dawah guys, we say it's not in Genesis. Then it's, but here are 2 rabbis. And what's he telling it? We have to go with what these particular rabbis say. Even if we look at what they're saying, we say, there's no way that's right. That's not what the text says. You have to go with them anyway. But wait a minute, the rabbis, on what planet do I have to go with and matter of fact, we've pointed this out before. You can't possibly think you have to agree with all rabbis because they contradict each other. It's like saying you have to agree with every Christian pastor who's ever lived. You cannot, it's impossible. It's impossible because people have concluded very different things. All right, so here we go. Here's Inspiring Philosophy's response, ladies and gentlemen. This is cherry picking, Mohammed Hijab. You're ignoring that other rabbis disagreed with Rashi and argued Rebekah was 14. And I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, 14 fits way better given the description of her. But even that, you don't have enough to make an accurate conclusion of her age, because you do not know how old she was in Genesis 22. It just says this is when Abraham heard that a bunch of people had been born. How long had they been around already? Some of them had been around for decades. So you just don't know. It's like Mary in the Bible. It doesn't give an age for her. So all you have to kind of go on is speculation that, well, you know, she's a young woman or something like that. So that's all you have to go on. Anyway, this is cherry picking Mohammed Hijab. You are ignoring that other rabbis disagreed with Rashi and argued Rebekah was 14. And here we have it. Rashi's comment on this apparently historically irrelevant detail is that the Torah informed us that Yitzhak, after marrying Rivkah, waited for 3 years until she was old enough to engage in intercourse and become pregnant, 14 years old. In his commentary on Genesis 24:16, item 91, Rabbi Kasher in his Torah Shlema deals at length with the conflicting opinions about Rivkah, that's Rebekah, with the conflicting opinions about Rivkah's age at marriage. So there are conflicting opinions. Sifri on Deuteronomy 34:7 claims that Rivkah lived to the age of 133 years, same as that of Kehat, son of Levi. Our author calculates that if Rivkah had only been 3 years at the time when she was married, that the calculation would be wrong by 11 years. He proceeds to give details tracing the various ages of our patriarchs and matriarchs down to the birth of Kehat. He also understands the midrash according to which Abraham heard about the fact that Bethuel had fathered Rivkah as not meaning that this had occurred at the same time as the Akedah, but that Abraham had belatedly heard about this. Yeah, because that's what the text says. It just says he heard news from home. As proof that Rivkah could not have been only 3 years when Eliezer met her, he cites the fact that her brother and mother referred to her as that would be a maiden or young woman, a term never applied to someone younger than 12 and a half years of age. Did you catch that? The term used of her, which would usually be translated as maiden or young woman, is never applied to someone younger than 12 and a half years of age. So they'd have to say this is the only time that this term is ever applied to a girl younger than 12 and a half, and it's applied to a 3-year-old. What do we have here? The rabbis disagree as to the age. Another quotation. The rabbis disagree as to the age of Rebekah at the time of her marriage to Isaac. The statement of the Siddur Olam Rabbah and Genesis Rabbah that Abraham was informed of Rebekah's birth when he ascended Mount Moriah for the Akedah is interpreted by some as meaning that Rebekah was born at that time, and that consequently she was only 3 years old at the time of her marriage. Other rabbis, however, so there are other rabbis, conclude from calculations that she was 14 years old and that therefore she was born 11 years before the Akedah, both numbers being found in different manuscripts of the Siddur Olam Rabbah.
By the way, the word that we just stumbled upon earlier there, the Hebrew one is nara. That is a girl, and is in Jewish law understood to be generally in Jewish law understood to be in reference to a girl that is at the age where she's transitioning to becoming an adult, between young and adult, so around the ages of 12, 13 or something like that, where she's ready for performing the commandments of the Bible, but not yet ready for marriage.
Interesting. And there at the end you had the Sifar HaYashar gives Rebekah's age at her marriage as 10 years. So what do you have? You have a couple of rabbis who said 3, based on the assumption that when Rebekah's mentioned that means she was born right then, when that makes no sense because it mentions a bunch of people, in fact, multiple generations of people that Abraham heard about at that time. No basis for concluding, oh yeah, that as soon as Rebekah was born, he got the email from home. And what do you have? You have others that say 10. You have others that say 14. Why are they giving different ages? Well, you don't have a lot to go on, so they're doing their calculations very differently and coming up with different numbers because you don't have an actual number. And then you have, however, the rabbis were simply wrong. There's nothing in Genesis 22 or 23 that says Rebekah was born the year Sarah died. The rabbis were creative and read that into the text. We simply do not know how old she was when she married Isaac. Stop cherry picking sources to push this bad argument. Ouch.
There's a funny thing. There's so much disagreement on what Rashi actually said. There is so much disagreement on what Rashi meant. There's disagreement with Rashi himself, including by certain other scholars like Ibn Ezra, who is very very much respected, and who also, by the way, focuses very much on the linguistic and grammatical aspect and analyzes the text and so on. Where Rashi is more of a kind of a traditional legalistic commentator, and like one of the discussions that they have is as also here referenced here, which is that when it says that he waited till she was 3, that's not really what it says. What it says is literally. And he waited until she was ready for marital relations 3 years. That's what it says there. So it doesn't say until she was 3. It says 3 years, which some understand, which is also understood as the waiting was 3 years, and there is no indication at all to how old she actually was. It's just the waiting period lasted 3 years until she was ready. That's being pointed out, and so on. So. And the majority of rabbis disagree that she was a young little girl. They also say it doesn't make sense because she's carrying buckets and feeding the camels and so on. So the general understanding in Jewish tradition is that she was a young woman at the general common age for marriage. When they married. That's it. Nobody understands it as her being a 3-year-old girl.